Chapter 732. The area of the desert prison was neither too big nor too small, but it was more than 300 acres in the desert. It looked very majestic, like a small city that had suffered the vicissitudes of life. Under the leadership of Xiao Mahai, Dongxing Wudi, and Yi Dongxing personally accompanied Li Tianlan into the desert prison. That was to accompany. Under the common interests, even Yi Dongxing, who did not get along with Li Tianlan, showed a smile and a very peaceful attitude. Such a move made Xiao Mahai more sure of his guess. Li Tianlan's coming to the desert prison was just that both sides of the game took a step back for the time being. It was far from the time to decide the outcome. The giant group and the southeast group joined hands and advanced and retreated together. In such a situation, even if the other four groups joined hands, it was impossible to uproot the southeast group and the giant group, not to mention that the other side of the game was just the academics and the prince group. As long as the two groups were not completely extinct, they would always have a way to let Li Tianlan out. Xiao Mahai could climb to the position of lieutenant general because he had seen too many similar things, so he knew Li Tianlan's situation very well. The outcome of the game between the four groups was still uncertain, but Li Tianlan could be said to be in an invincible position. At least he would not be trapped in the desert prison. Xiao Mahai could be completely sure of this. The interior of the desert prison was a semi-closed and semi-open building. After entering the gate and passing through a 100-meter-long passage full of various weapons, the first place to enter was the dormitory where the prison staff lived. There was a canteen between the dormitory and the prison. After passing the canteen, it was the place where the prisoners lived. There were extremely narrow corridors full of rooms, but most of them were empty. The prisoners were far away from each other. Li Tianlan looked at the narrow and winding corridor in front of him, and a very familiar expression appeared in his eyes. The entire prisoner area was a huge and complicated maze. The maze he walked through in the first half of the entrance maneuver when he entered the Sky Academy was a simplified version of the present maze. "Where is my room?" Li Tianlan suddenly asked. Xiao Mahai hesitated and glanced at Yi Dongxing. Yi Dongxing smiled and said nothing, keeping his composure. Xiao Mahai smiled and said in a steady voice, "Your Highness's room is not here. During the time you are here, Your Highness, please live in my room. I have had it cleaned before you came. It's clean and I promise Your Highness will be satisfied. This treatment is really different. Prisoners come to prison, but they live in the warden's room." "Interesting." Dongxing Wudi laughed and patted Xiao Mahai on the shoulder, but he did not show any displeasure. On the contrary, he looked extremely satisfied. Xiao Mahai's room and office were corpses. As a lieutenant general of Jianghu state, no matter how down and out he was, he still had the power to create a luxurious enough residence for himself in this remote place. Although Li Tianlan had to stay in the desert prison during this time, how could Dongxing Wudi really let Xiao Mahai lock him up in the prisoner area? Li Tianlan's current status was completely different from when he first came here a few years ago. He had intended to talk some sense into Xiao Mahai, but Xiao Mahai was so sensible that he even gave up his room. The warden's room had direct control over all the weapon systems in the prison. Xiao Mahai's decision showed how firm his position was. Dongxing Wudi glanced at Yi Dongxing. Yi Dongxing's smile remained unchanged, and he said politely, "It seems that General Xiao has to suffer." Xiao Mahai didn't even look at Yi Dongxing. He just kept bowing to Li Tianlan and said with a smile, "It's Your Highness who has to suffer. The conditions are simple. I hope Your Highness won't be offended." "You're welcome, General." Li Tianlan shook his head and looked at the endless maze corridor in front of him. He suddenly said, "Let's just walk around. Your Highness has the final say." Xiao Mahai said without hesitation and pressed a button on the wall. A subtle light flashed in the corridor. In everyone's sight, the doors in the narrow corridor became transparent. Standing in the corridor, Li Tianlan could clearly see what was going on inside through the doors. At the same time, countless letters and numbers appeared in the corridor. In the corridor in front of Li Tianlan, the A1 sign lit up. This represented the entrance to the maze. In this extremely complicated maze, the staff usually walked back and forth according to this number. All the rooms at the entrance to the maze were empty, and there were no prisoners. Li Tianlan shook his head and didn't look at the number in front of him. He walked along the corridor. His movements were casual and a little careless. But the deeper he went, the more frightened Xiao Mahai was. Because the route Li Tianlan chose was too coincidental. He completely ignored the wall number as a reminder and walked forward at will. But he took the shortest route and could observe the most prisoners. If he walked along this route, Li Tianlan could almost see the situation of most prisoners. At the same time, he could also approach a square at the end of the prisoner area, which was used for prisoners to take a breather. Simple and clear. The so-called maze was completely useless under his feet. This kind of familiarity had almost penetrated into his bones. At this moment, Xiao Mahai even felt that Li Tianlan was the warden here, and he was like a tour behind him. Minister, Xiao Mahai wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Dongxing Wudi smiled and looked at Li Tianlan, who was walking forward. His eyes were a little complicated, with a touch of guilt. He whispered, Tianlan has been here before and lived here for a whole year. Xiao Mahai was stunned. Yi Dongxing was also stunned. He turned his head and glanced at Dongxing Wudi meaningfully. About 5 or 6 years ago, a trusted major general of the Dongxing clan was suddenly sent to the desert prison to serve as the deputy warden, and it was arranged by Dongxing Wudi himself. The major general, who was considered a rising star in the giant group, suddenly had a bleak future. Before that, he was deeply trusted by Dongxing Wudi. At that time, no one knew why Dongxing Wudi made this choice, and many people even speculated that the rising star had betrayed the Dongxing clan. Yi Dongxing paid special attention to this matter. Later, the major general stayed in the desert prison for more than a year, and then he was transferred to the Border Control Corps. He left the Border Control Corps 2 years ago and was promoted to lieutenant general. Now he was the deputy commander of the Zhongzhou Eastern Theater of Operations and the commander of an ace army. He might even be promoted to general in a few years. His future was extremely bright. The more it was like this, the more Yi Dongxing couldn't understand why Dongxing Wudi sent him to the desert prison at that time. Li Tianlan had stayed in the desert prison for a year? Would it be the same as a few years ago? Did it have anything to do with that strange transfer? I've lived here more than once. Li Tianlan, who was walking in front, suddenly opened his mouth. His voice was very quiet, with a kind of calmness as if he had experienced countless things. No matter now or in the future, this place will be my most impressive enemy. During that year, I experienced a lot of things here. His voice became low, and there seemed to be a trace of trembling in his calmness. I'll never forget it. For example, what did Your Highness experience here? Yi Dongxing asked curiously. He was really curious about this question. This question meant many things. If Li Tianlan's coming here had something to do with the strange transfer of the rising star and the giant group 5 or 6 years ago, then it meant that the engagement between the Dongxing clan and the Li family did not start after the Dongxing clan saw Li Tianlan's potential, but earlier, the two sides had a very close cooperation. In order to enter the desert prison, Dongxing Wudi even let his confidant waste more than a year's time to escort Li Tianlan. One could imagine what this meant. Moreover, Yi Dongxing suddenly remembered that during that time, Dongxing Hongguang's adopted son, Thunder God, who was deeply trusted by Dongxing Wudi, was also missing. The more he thought about it, the more uneasy Yi Dongxing was. He couldn't see what was worth Dongxing Wudi's trouble in the desert prison. The prisoners here were undoubtedly very important and valuable, and there were many real old foxes and martial arts masters among them. But the process of retrieving prisoners from the desert prison was extremely complicated. Moreover, Kunlun City, the Ministry of State Security, and the General Staff Headquarters would come here regularly for strict examination. If Dongxing Wudi secretly took away any prisoners, there was no reason that Yi Dongxing, who had been in charge of the General Staff Headquarters for many years, did not know. If it was not for prisoners, then for what? A lot. Li Tianlan glanced at Yi Dongxing and said blandly, a lot. So far, the most desperate, fearful, helpless, depressed, crazy, and closest to death days of my life have been spent here. A shadow flashed in his eyes. Since he entered the secular world, he had experienced many things. In the final battle in Heaven Capital, he was pierced in the heart by a sword. In the trial day in Eastern Europe, if there was no deity's sword energy, he would have no hope of survival. But among many things, only when he was here did he really feel the most thorough despair and fear that had almost penetrated into his soul. And it was not only once. In that year, it lasted for nearly 3 days and 3 nights. Again and again, his spirit was completely tortured by despair and fear and completely collapsed. In the collapse, he stubbornly became rational, and then collapsed and reorganized again. In those days, Li Tianlan peed his pants, scratched his scalp, and bit off his own flesh and blood. That year, he was only 17 years old. When he was at his weakest, he experienced the deepest despair and fear. He survived the situation where he should not have survived and became the Li Tianlan of today, the heavenly son of today. The desert prison had given him countless things in that year. And the most precious thing was the willpower that had been tempered in countless times of despair and fear. That kind of willpower could even surpass the heavenly king heart. It could be said to be truly invincible, as hard as gold, as hard as a rock. That was the most precious treasure he had ever obtained. Chapter 733. At the end of the maze was a square. Compared with the thousands of miles of yellow sand outside, there was at least a flat road in the square. The square was not big, but it looked extremely empty. There were a few basketball racks, a miniature football field, and a few table tennis tables scattered in it. Apart from that, there was nothing else. The prison's control of prisoners was not too strict. Everything in the square was entertainment facilities for prisoners. Of course, there was a strict time limit, an average of 2 hours a day. When Li Tianlan and the others walked into the square, the break time had passed. The square looked extremely desolate. Li Tianlan walked around the track in silence and finally came to a corner. The corner was covered with yellow sand. A hole slightly larger than the dog hole was covered by a pile of weeds. It looked bottomless. Li Tianlan stood in front of the hole, narrowed his eyes, and said nothing. Xiao Mahai's face changed. Dongxing Wudi's expression was solemn. Yi Dongsheng was a little confused. It is said that when the desert prison was first established, the plan was to build the prison underground. Li Tianlan looked at the hole in front of him and said in a flat voice, "The military gave a detailed topographic map and did a site survey. In theory, a large military prison could be built about 80 meters underground, just like the 2 nearby military bases." No one spoke. The 2 military bases, Sky Eye and Sky Arrow, were built under the yellow sand around the desert prison. Everyone present knew this. It's just that the terrain of the prison is very complicated. When the construction was almost completed, the military found that the structure of the underground prison was a little unstable. If they wanted to strengthen it, they had to pay a lot of money. At that time, there was a big accident in the construction of the prison. After the parliament held a meeting to consider and study the construction cost, they decided to give up the plan of the underground prison, so the desert prison was placed on the ground. Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward and said lightly, "In fact, there is no difference. This prison is a real dangerous place, whether it is on the ground or underground." "Your Highness is right." Xiao Mahai smiled apologetically. Later, many years after the prison was built and put into use, a fugitive who wanted to escape accidentally found this hole. This hole can lead directly to the almost completed underground prison. General Xiao knows this story, right? It's recorded in the files. Xiao Mahai nodded respectfully. He was the second invincible realm expert in the prison's hundreds of years of history. He opened this passage quietly and tried to escape. 3 hours after the break time ended, the prison found him. In the next hour, the prison found this hole. The invincible realm expert escaped. Yi Dongsheng raised his eyebrows. His authority was enough for him to view all the information about the desert prison. However, who would be interested in seeing the history of the desert prison? Yi Dongxing didn't know about this at all. No, he's crazy. Xiao Mahai said faintly. He entered the underground prison. On the 13th hour, his mind completely collapsed and he lost control of his power. After an extreme madness, he died inside. From then on, the tunnel became smaller and smaller. At first, people could walk upright in the tunnel, but now. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and carefully recalled the feeling at that time. Probably only enough for people to crawl inside. They can't even raise their bodies. For a moment, Yi Dongxing didn't. He came to his senses and asked subconsciously, "What's inside?" Xiao Mahai smiled. Li Tianlan also smiled. Inside, he opened his mouth softly, with the color of memory. The underground prison is basically the same as the prison now. It's also a maze, and there's nothing in the maze. There was nothing. This was the truth. Yi Dongxing froze for a moment and then understood. His scalp suddenly went numb. There was nothing. He couldn't help taking a step forward and looking at the seemingly endless dark hole in front of him. The muscles at the corners of his eyes kept twitching. This was really just a hole that people could barely get in. Because of the geology, the deeper it was, the smaller the space inside was, and even many places had been completely blocked. Even if the invincible realm expert planned to escape from here at the beginning, the space inside would be bigger, but there was still nothing. Yi Dongxing could imagine that there was only darkness and silence, as well as the countless twists and turns that seemed to have no end. That kind of loneliness and fear would be magnified thousands of times in absolute darkness and silence, turning into despair. Therefore, even the invincible realm expert who escaped from the prison didn't last long. In the 13th hour, he went crazy. He was completely tortured by this silence and darkness to the point of mental breakdown, and finally died on the constantly repeating path. Yi Dongxing couldn't help but glance at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan said that he had experienced the most desperate and frightening time here. Vaguely, he seemed to understand something. I crawled in from here. Li Tianlan said quietly, I crawled into the darkness like this. It was very narrow inside, and I could only maintain a kind of ability to crawl forward. I tried to climb up, but I couldn't lie down. The sand around me would constantly fall, just like being buried alive. There were many places inside where there were no roads. I could only rely on my own hands to open the way, so it was very exhausting. But I had no food or water. Even if I had, I didn't dare to eat, and I didn't have the mood to eat. I couldn't see anything there, and the only thing I could hear was my heartbeat, which was getting faster and faster. That kind of depression, congestion, darkness, and silence tortured me crazy again and again. Well, I said crazy, but in there, I couldn't even take a deep breath. I was sweating all the time, and it seemed like I was bleeding. That kind of fear and suffocation affected my reason. I went the wrong way again and again, and even scared myself to tears many times. At that time, I really thought I couldn't get out, and I thought so many times. Yi Dongxing's face was a little pale. He didn't know whether he felt the same or something else. Cold sweat flowed down his forehead, and his tone was very cautious. How long did you persist? I didn't persist. Dongxing Wudi interrupted Yi Dongxing's words in a hoarse voice. Tianlan had been moving inside at that time. He went in from here and finally found the exit at the other end. The whole process took 70 hours and 56 minutes. When he climbed out, he was severely dehydrated, and there were scratches all over his body, and one of his fingers was almost bitten off. But at that time, his mind was still clear. Li Tianlan didn't speak. He looked at the hole in front of him, expressionless, and his eyes were full of coldness. Whether it was Xiao Mahai or Yi Dongxing, their faces all changed. 70 hours and 56 minutes. In that kind of environment that could drive an invincible realm expert completely crazy in more than 10 hours, Li Tianlan struggled for more than 70 hours. And it was not the current Li Tianlan. It was the Li Tianlan of that year. Yi Dongxing could imagine the depression and fear in that kind of environment. But he couldn't imagine what kind of madness and despair Li Tianlan had experienced after experiencing all this. The corner of his mouth moved as if he wanted to say something, but for a moment, he couldn't say anything. Li Tianlan stood there quietly, as if he was lost in thought. But for the first time, Yi Dongxing felt the power from this figure. His eyes were looking up. 70 hours. Yi Dongxing couldn't do it. In this narrow passage now, he didn't even dare to say that he could hold on for 70 minutes. The key was that under such circumstances, Li Tianlan was not static. He was acting, thinking, and looking for the right route. Such 70 hours were enough to temper a person's collapsed spirit to a level that no one could imagine. Yi Dongxing bowed slightly to Li Tianlan. He was the god of war and also a martial artist. This was the first time he felt the aura of a strong man from Li Tianlan. At this moment, what he respected was not Li Tianlan, but the almost inhuman will. Before I leave, I will walk through this passage again. Li Tianlan said slowly, no, I will leave directly from here. All the shadows in his eyes disappeared, and he became calm and confident. Let everyone see it again. Dongxing Wudi sighed softly, but he didn't know what to say. Li Tianlan raised his head and looked at the sky. The sun in the sky shone on every corner of the square. But there was no sand or wind in the square. A thin barrier enveloped the entire square, isolating it from the outside world and this place at the same time. Li Tianlan didn't speak, just looking at the sun in the sky. Through the edge of the shield, the sky in the distance was pure blue. There was no shadow in the clear sky, and it was extremely quiet. The world was quiet. Minister, please go back. Li Tianlan turned around and looked at Dongxing Wudi with a smile. It's good here. I'm very satisfied. I really need such a place to think about something seriously. Dongxing Wudi took a deep look at him, nodded, and said, okay. During my time here, Emperor Dong's palace and Rushi have troubled you, minister. Li Tianlan continued. Dongxing Wudi shook his head slightly and asked, anything else? Li Tianlan thought for a moment and raised his palm. There was a buzzing sound in the air. An extremely delicate and ghastly small black sword appeared in Li Tianlan's hand. The small sword rotated around Li Tianlan, as if it was reluctant to part with him. Li Tianlan flicked the blade of the Xianyuan sword and said calmly, Minister, please bring this to Little Bai. Dongxing Wudi held out his hand. Li Tianlan glanced at the Xianyuan sword. The Xianyuan sword trembled and fell into Dongxing Wudi's hand obediently. Li Tianlan said no more and sent Dongxing Wudi and Yi Dongxing out of the prison. Under the clear sky, there was endless yellow sand. He stood in the flying yellow sand, watching the helicopter gradually take off and go further and further away. For a long time, he didn't move and kept watching. As if looking at his future and the Great Way. End of Volume 5. Chapter 734. It was raining in Qingzhou. The rain of early autumn kept falling. In the autumn world, it was empty and quiet. There was no morning or sunset under the gloomy sky. When she opened her eyes, the sky was still gray. The dense water lines kept falling, reflecting in her pupils like streams of light, cold and illusory. Her eyes went from blank to sober, and then she felt a little disappointed. She slowly sat up from the bed. The white blanket slid off her body, revealing her snow-white and soft shoulders. It seemed a little cold. She hugged her shoulders with both hands, bent her knees against the back of the bed, and looked at the autumn rain outside the window. She was in a daze and was silent for a long time. Autumn was a season that could easily affect people's moods. The impact was neither good nor bad. It was not a clear feeling, but it always made people feel strange. The autumn rain was falling. The autumn leaves danced in the wind and rain and fell again. She looked through the window silently, and her heart was a little complicated. It was longing, concern, melancholy, and reluctance. She sat in a daze for a long time until the alarm clock rang. She slowly got out of bed and put on her pajamas. She could vaguely hear the laughter of young people downstairs, carefree and carefree. She glanced down. The students who went to school had already walked out of their homes. A new day had begun, but it was still a little strange. The continuous autumn rain beat on the entire Jianghu city, and her eyes became calm. This rain, this season, suddenly made her feel a little homesick. But she already did not know where her home was. She did not know, so she simply did not want to think about it. She took a light breath, turned around, and walked into the bathroom. She brushed her teeth and washed her face, and methodically made herself a simple breakfast. Then, she took out a very ordinary black professional suit from the empty wardrobe and changed into it. After all the preparation work was done, there were still 20 minutes before the departure time. She poured herself a glass of warm water, sipped it, and prepared for the interview. Yes, the interview. It was something she had never done before, at least not a month ago. In a month's time, she went to 4 cities and submitted nearly 12 resumes to different companies. After going through 6 interviews, after serious consideration, she rejected 5 of the offers and finally chose Jianghu. Jianghu was a very ordinary inland city, medium in scale and relatively backward in development. There were no mountains, rivers, or seas in the whole city, not even any landmark enterprises. The only advantage was probably that it was very comfortable and the pace of life was relatively slow. Such cities were everywhere in Jianghu state, and there was nothing noteworthy at all. She rented a house here for $1,000 a month. She rented it for half a year, and then chose a small foreign trade company. She passed the first interview, and today she participated in the second interview. His phone suddenly rang. It wasn't a phone call, but an app notification. The deputy governor of Beihai province, Chang Wansheng, has been placed on file for investigation by the Beihai Ministry of Supervision for serious violations of discipline. Her eyes were calm and gentle, without the slightest fluctuation. She just quietly drank the warm water and carried a lady's backpack out of the house. There was a brand new electric scooter in the corridor. She touched the electric scooter and looked out the window at the autumn rain. She wrinkled her nose and thought about it. In the end, she gave up and booked a taxi online. When the taxi stopped in front of her, she opened the door and got in. Her voice was clear and quiet as she said softly, "To the Susui Trading Building." The Susui Trading Building really wasn't big. The 5-story office building looked quite old. This was the headquarters of the Susui Trading Group. This company didn't stand out in the whole country, but in Jianghu, it was second to none. Every time there was an open recruitment, the competition for the positions was fierce. To some extent, those who could pass the first round of interviews and enter the second interview basically had their own merits. But now, looking at the resumes on the table and the people who were going to participate in the second interview, He Shui's impatience was practically written on her face. He Shui was the CEO of the Susui Trading Group. She was 31 years old and had just gotten divorced last year. In the entire trading circle of Jianghu, she was a rather famous career woman. In the recent second interview, one of the positions to be recruited was for her special assistant. She had been looking forward to it, but she hadn't expected that all the candidates she saw would be of this standard. 8 candidates were competing for 4 positions, 3 men and 5 women. He Shui remembered very clearly that 2 of the male candidates had said their names wrong when they introduced themselves, and the other one was stammering. He Shui couldn't understand what he was talking about even after talking for a long time. And a few of the female candidates were obviously distracted. One of them had said the wrong college she had graduated from. The entire process of the second interview was a complete disaster in He Shui's eyes. It was a mess. It wasn't easy for her to get past the 5 candidates. Her heart had completely disappeared. When the 5th candidate walked out of the conference room, she couldn't help but stand up and say, "I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first." CEO He, don't worry. From their resumes, they seem pretty good. A middle-aged deputy CEO smiled and said softly. Pretty good? He Shui raised her eyebrows. She was undoubtedly a very beautiful woman. She was in her early 30s, which was the most beautiful period of a woman. Mature, elegant, and calm. It was just that her entire aura seemed a little too fierce when she was working, so much so that it diluted her originally good looks. I can't see what's good about these people. Oh, except for their resumes. I don't even know how they passed the first round of interviews. Who was in charge of the first round of interviews? I need an explanation. Hiishue's voice was filled with undisguised displeasure. I was in charge of the first round of interviews. The middle-aged deputy CEO who had spoken just now smiled and said, CEO, the performance of those people just now wasn't very good, but it's understandable. Their state today is really a little unjust. Huh? Hiishue raised her eyebrows. I said that there was a candidate in the second round today who had a very good image. The deputy CEO chuckled with obvious appreciation and even amazement in his eyes. Very, very good. These people's mentality is probably affected. Hiishue knew about this. Part of the reason why she came here today was also because of this. But if it was said that the image of the competitors had caused the mentality of those candidates to be out of balance, she inevitably felt a little ridiculous. Is it so exaggerated? How good can the image be? The resumes are on the table. You have also seen the photos. The deputy CEO said calmly, CEO, please sit for a while. I promise that you will be satisfied with this candidate. Hiishue thought for a moment, sat down slowly, and flipped through the last resume. There was a very formal 1-inch photo on the resume. The young woman in the photo did have bright eyes and white teeth. But through this simple and formal 1-inch photo, what she could see was really limited. She shook her head and said, directly invite this candidate in. The deputy CEO nodded and turned on the loudspeaker beside him. At this moment, even his voice unconsciously became soft. Number 6, Li Mutong. Hiishue quickly lowered her head and looked at the resume again. Li Mutong, female, 23 years old, graduated from the finance department of Beihai University. Work experience, none. Intended position, clerk. She raised her eyebrows and raised her head. The glass door of the conference room was pushed open. A tall and slim figure walked in. Hiishue's eyes flashed a touch of astonishment, and then she was completely stunned. She didn't even hear the smile on the other side's face. The deputy CEO said that the candidate had a good image. Only when she saw Li Mutong in person did Hiishue understand what this sentence meant. Exquisite short hair, beautiful face, clean eyes, simple dress, she was quiet. She stood there, but her whole body seemed to be glowing, which made people involuntarily focus their eyes on her. At this moment, Hiishue couldn't even describe her feelings. Even as a woman, she had to admit that she had never seen such a beautiful person of the same sex, especially the temperament of the other party. Hiishue looked down at the resume again. 23 years old. She took a deep breath, and her eyes gradually lit up. The other party was very young, but she couldn't see the slightest childishness from her. It was a kind of indescribable maturity and elegance, but also full of vitality, quiet, indifferent, calm, and strong. Almost in an instant, Hiishue was completely conquered by the other party's image. This was the person that Su Shui wanted, even if she didn't know anything. At this moment, Hiishue really thought so. Her eyes became extremely soft. She noticed that the other party's calm but not aggressive eyes were looking at her. As the CEO, she blushed and coughed. Hello, Miss Li Mutong. Hello. Li Mutong looked at her and said softly. Hiishue took a deep breath, calmed herself down, and said in a softer tone, please introduce yourself. Okay. She nodded. I graduated from the finance department of Beihai University, and I have a certain understanding of foreign trade. I am proficient in 4 languages, Chinese, English, Snow Country, and Germanic, and her introduction was concise, but not general. Perhaps because of her beautiful voice, when she finished, the company leaders in charge of the interview all felt a little sorry. The impulse in Hiishue's heart became a reality. She just asked a question that didn't have much to do with work. Miss Li Mutong, are you married? Do you have a boyfriend? Her bright eyes seemed to dim for a moment, and she shook her head gently. No, I don't have a boyfriend. He Shui nodded. She didn't even ask for the consent of others. She said seriously, Miss Li Mutong, I can confirm that you are the talent that our company needs. We can handle the employment procedures for you right away. In the future, I hope that you can be my special assistant. What do you think? Li Mutong was stunned, and she said softly, I applied for the position of a clerk. I think it suits me very well. He Shui frowned. The 4 positions that were recruited were the CEO's special assistant, financial assistant, business manager, and clerk. In her mind, Li Mutong in front of her could take any role. She didn't know why she chose a clerk. Was it because she had no work experience? When she was about to speak, Li Mutong smiled. I insist. Oh, okay. Okay. He Shui was stunned, and she took the initiative to reach out her hand. Then, welcome to Su Shui. Thank you. Li Mutong smiled. He Shui no longer had the slightest interest in the second interview. She smiled and said, let's go. I'll take you to handle the employment procedures. You can start work tomorrow. By the way, let's exchange numbers. Ah, where do you live? In the constant questioning, the 2 of them walked out one after another. With He Shui's personal accompaniment, the employment procedures were completed very quickly. When Li Mutong walked out of the Su Shui trading building with the work pass, the autumn rain was still falling endlessly. She looked up at the rainy sky. After a moment of silence, she gently raised her hand and hung the light blue work pass on her snow-white neck. Under the autumn rain, she smiled extremely brightly. All the burdens and entanglements seemed to have completely left her. She turned her back to the place where she was going to work, facing the autumn wind and rain, and opened her hands. So relaxed. Like a new life. Chapter 735. The helicopter slowly lowered its altitude in the pure blue sky. Below was a delicate and beautiful small town that almost looked like a telephone. The town was not big, without industrial pollution or dense traffic. The autumn leaves fell on the flat streets, with a touch of messy beauty, but the whole city was extremely clean. Villas were scattered in picturesque places, and large areas of greenery surrounded the whole city. The continuous green color and yellow leaves extended all the way to the end of the small town. The spectacular white waterfall gushed out of the mountain and fell down, turning into a clear lake around the city. The quiet and beautiful town surrounded by the lake seemed elegant as if it had been forgotten by the whole world. This is the best world of mortals. Qin Weibai looked down at the scene through the window of the cabin, and a touch of longing flashed on her perfect face. No disputes, no calculations, no fatigue, and no struggle. If you don't want to do something, then don't do it. Real freedom, peace, and joy. It's too idealistic. In fact, there are some small disputes and contradictions, but most of them are controllable. Compared with the outside, this place deserves the word best. Lin Yuxian smiled. As the helicopter landed on the neat lawn, he opened the cabin door and bowed slightly. Patriarch, please. Qin Weibai nodded and walked out of the cabin. It had been a month since she got the body of the god of war, and Qin Weibai officially came to Switzerland. This was also the first time she came to the headquarters of the Lin clan. Her feet stepped on the green grass, and she looked up slightly at the small town in front of her and the welcoming crowd in the small town. Under the ancient mottled and poetic city wall, the welcoming crowd stood quietly and neatly, and everyone was staring at Qin Weibai. A golden fishtail dress wrapped her exquisite figure. Most of the time, she wore no makeup and wore light makeup. Under the golden top hat, her sharp and delicate face looked more dreamy. Wearing silver high-heeled shoes and a delicate handbag, she walked out of the cabin with horsewoman standing beside her. Lin Yuxian bowed slightly. The bright and warm sunshine fell on her golden dress. the indescribable beauty and nobility were like a force sweeping the whole city. Quiet, mysterious, cold, and dreamy. She looked sacred. This was the first time that Qin Weibai came to the headquarters of the Lin clan, Wolfrey Heights. It was also the first time that the new patriarch of the Lin clan came to Wolfrey Heights. Before that, the patriarchs of the branches of the Lin clan scattered around the world all rushed back to Wolfrey Heights. The relationship between the headquarters of the Lin clan and the major branches had always been very loose. The headquarters provided the necessary development funds for the branches in the early stage, and after the branches matured, they also had to fulfill the responsibility of supporting the headquarters in terms of funds. Simply put, the headquarters and the major branches usually had no contact with each other except for receiving the funds from the major branches. Only when a branch encountered a great problem would the branch contact the headquarters and apply for arbitration from the headquarters. There had always been only one result of the arbitration, that was, the branch naturally helped the branch. The Lin clan would draw up a support plan as soon as possible. It was possible to ask other branches to give financial support, human support, or even military support and technical support to the branch in need of help. The Lin clan, which had developed for hundreds of years, had never interfered with the development of the branches. The major branches were densely packed on the genealogy, which could be described as various. There were consortiums in Europe, gangsters in North America, drug lords in South America, and warlords in Africa. No matter what kind of support a branch needed for help, the Lin clan could always give it what it needed at the first time. When a branch encountered a disaster, the patriarch of the headquarters would even intervene in person. For hundreds of years, the headquarters of the Lin clan had an expert at the peak of the invincible realm in each generation, which was also one of the keys to the headquarters' transcendent status. In general, the headquarters of the Lin clan had been living a peaceful life for hundreds of years. What they had done most was to coordinate the relationship between the major branches, give some help when necessary, and take back some money. The branches did not give much to the headquarters. The headquarters did not give much to the branches either. But the existence of each other was extremely important to each other. This was the perfect mutual need in politics. To be exact, this was an alliance, which was extremely stable and almost unbreakable. Hundreds of years might make the affection between countless branches and the headquarters become indifferent, but in this alliance, it didn't matter at all. The most important thing was that the two sides could give each other, but no one was a burden to the other. The headquarters did not need the money and power of the branches. Money, power, and status, to put it bluntly, were all external forces. Whether these things were important or not depended on what they could do. And if these things could be done, the headquarters could also do it. They received feedback from the major branches and could do almost everything. When the headquarters had so much money that they couldn't even count it, what was the point of the so-called interests? Similarly, the life in the headquarters was not what the major branches liked. That kind of leisure and freedom might be accepted by the majority of people, but it was not suitable for ambitious people. They could do whatever they wanted in the outside world, had money and power, and had strong support from all over the world. They did not covet the headquarters, and even if they did, what could they covet? The headquarters had almost no requirements for them. They were a group of carefree, lazy people. What they usually did was to coordinate the work of the major branches and be impartial. Even if they wanted to usurp the throne and become the patriarch of the headquarters, they still had to do this kind of work. They might not do it, but this was equivalent to destroying the survival mode of the entire Lin clan. The major branches would not agree. And those who didn't want to do this work would mostly set up new branches instead of usurping the throne, because the consequences of failure would be serious, and there would be no benefits if they succeeded. On the contrary, the more stable the core position of the headquarters was, the more stable the development of the major branches would be. This was a real win-win situation. This kind of alliance model was diametrically opposed to the way the Wang family of Beihai gathered all the branches. The Lin clan's approach would reduce the cohesion within the clan. To some extent, it would disperse the scale, and then reduce the deterrent, but it would never have to worry about internal strife. This kind of alliance was extremely stable. As long as they did not encounter an unimaginable foreign enemy that fundamentally destroyed the headquarters and all the branches of the Lin clan, this model of the Lin clan could develop for 500 years, 1,000 years, or even longer. The most important condition of this model was that there must be an expert in the headquarters who could control the situation, not only in the Lin clan, but also in the entire Dark World. For example, Lin Fengting now. The idea of the Wang family of Beihai was undoubtedly to strengthen the cohesion within the family without limit. In the entire Beihai province, there were 7 sword-holding families, and dozens of branches of the Wang family of Beihai were all gathered together. While they shared interests with each other, sometimes it was tantamount to forcing the branches to be loyal to the family. This kind of forced cohesion was undoubtedly the most terrible at times. This was also the fundamental reason why the Wang family of Beihai had been the #1 power in the Dark World for hundreds of years. However, the strong centralization of power would also lead to increasing conflicts of interests, so the Wang family of Beihai had never been calm. When the contradictions accumulated to a certain extent, reshuffling became a fixed procedure. Therefore, for hundreds of years, the Wang family of Beihai would almost break out a very fierce internal conflict every once in a while. It might last for decades, or it might last for hundreds of years. For example, the rift between Wang Qinglei and Wang Tianzong was getting clearer and clearer. Similar situations had played out several times in the past. This kind of absolute crisis also contained huge opportunities. If the Wang family of Beihai did not handle it well, it would fall apart. Once the reshuffling was successful, the Wang family of Beihai would be reborn, and the cohesion of the whole Beihai would return to its peak state. During that period, they were often the most invincible force in the Dark World. They would quickly strengthen themselves in this process. Then, as time went by, they would wait for new contradictions to break out, reshuffle again, and become stronger again. Just like the current Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong was missing. Wang Xiaoyao openly rebelled. The deterrent power of the Wang family of Beihai was reduced to the lowest point. But as long as the Wang family of Beihai could survive the current difficulties and wait for the 2 brothers Wang Tianzong and Wang Xiaoyao to decide the winner, as long as the Wang family of Beihai was still there, they would still stand at the peak of the Dark World for at least the next decades or hundreds of years. One was to control the major branches and frantically centralize power to increase the overall strength. The other was to let all the branches go, and most of the time, they did not care about anything and stood aloof from the world. These were the 2 completely different development models of the Wang family and the Lin clan. Qin Weibai could not tell the difference between the 2 development models, but she could clearly see that they were 2 different development concepts. It was like seeing the characters of the ancestors of the Wang family and the Lin clan. This was the origin of the 2 families, and it was also the development model that continued to this day. The first chosen one of the Wang family of Beihai always believed in his family. He thought that the whole could defeat everything by gathering all the forces. So there was the current Wang family of Beihai. For hundreds of years, there were ups and downs. Even if it was temporarily underestimated, it still had the power to return to the peak. The first war god of the Lin clan always believed in individuals. He believed that an invincible individual could sweep the whole world. So there was the current Lin clan. The headquarters maintained an absolute high-end combat capability and stood aloof from the world. The branches developed freely. For hundreds of years, they had no ups and downs, never fell into underestimation, and never set foot on the peak. They had always stood in a position that was within reach of the peak, neither advancing nor retreating. Their stability was chilling. Qin Weibai stood there quietly. No one knew what she was thinking in such a short time. The heads and representatives of the major branches of the Lin clan also stood quietly, looking at their new patriarch. She was not an invincible realm expert. But this was the choice of Lin Fengting, the strongest expert in the Dark World. Qin Weibai took a step forward. Golden dress, silver shoes, perfect face, dreamlike, sacred and noble. Hello. Her voice sounded in front of Worry-Free Villa, clear and light. Everyone bowed slightly at the same time. Patriarch. Qin Weibai nodded. Let's go back and talk. She walked to the city gate. She said go back, not go in. It seemed that from this moment on, she had officially entered the role of the patriarch. It might take a long time to think, but a decision often took only a moment. She was the patriarch of the Lin clan, and the direction of the Lin clan for the next few decades would be controlled by her. Judging from the current situation in the dark world, the Lin clan was in a really good situation. Because Lin Fengting's realm was too high. Wang Tianzong's injury could not be healed in a short time. The same was true of Li Guangtu. Lin Fengting was the only one who had broken through the peak of the invincible realm and could restore a certain amount of combat capability in a short time. This time, the peak of the entire dark world was really in front of the Lin clan. As long as they reached out, they could replace the position of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai didn't know if the Lin clan had such an opportunity in history, but in the face of this opportunity, she finally chose to give it up. She chose to follow the original direction of the Lin clan and stood in a position close to the peak, neither moving forward nor retreating. This might be what Lin Fengting hoped. He didn't mind that Qin Weibai used the resources of the Lin clan to support Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace. But the basic attitude of the headquarters of the Lin clan to stand aloof from the world could not be changed. How to operate it was Qin Weibai's own business. There were very few tall buildings in Worry-Free Villa. The so-called tall buildings here were buildings that were more than 6 floors above the ground. The autumn sunshine fell evenly on this small town that stood aloof from the world. The autumn wind blew, and the fallen leaves on the ground seemed to be lazy. Qin Weibai got into a custom-made black car. There were 4 people in the car, including horsewomen. One of them was a female driver and bodyguard, about 30 years old. She looked ordinary, but her expression was extremely focused. The other was a secretary assistant, a little younger, who was responsible for helping Qin Weibai deal with the daily affairs of the Lin clan. This was all arranged by the Lin clan, so Qin Weibai didn't say much. The mighty welcome motorcade drove into the gate of Worry-Free Villa and entered an extremely wide welcome avenue. Slowly going down the wide welcome avenue, the motorcade gradually drove into a tunnel-like space. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. The secretary sitting in the passenger seat noticed Qin Weibai's expression and said softly, "Patriarch, Yingbin Avenue is the only driveway on the surface of Worry-Free Villa. It connects all the underground traffic roads. Only after leaving Yingbin Avenue can you really enter Worry-Free Villa. There are no vehicles or parking lots on the ground of the villa. In terms of ground planning, it is a large modern park. We built the underground traffic network of the villa hundreds of years ago. The underground driveway extends to every corner of the villa, and we have set up elevators and buildings. All the internal vehicles of the Lin clan usually travel underground." Qin Weibai nodded. "Xingzhou City." "Yes." The secretary nodded and said in a proud tone, "Everything in Worry-Free Villa is similar to Xingzhou City, the capital of Beihai Province. Xingzhou City is the most beautiful city in Jianghu State, and Worry-Free Villa is more exquisite in this respect than Xingzhou City." Qin Weibai nodded with a smile. The whole city of Xingzhou City was also a park structure. There were only pedestrians on the ground, and no vehicles could be seen. The Wang family of Beihai used a lot of money to build all the traffic roads in Xingzhou City. The whole city looked like a huge garden. This multi-level urban structure meant that there were no so-called driveways in the whole city, only sidewalks. The driveways were built underground, which not only alleviated pollution, but also greatly reduced traffic accidents. Together with the subway line of Xingzhou City, it effectively solved the traffic pressure. In the survey of Jianghu State, Xingzhou City was the city with the best air index, the lowest pollution, the largest green area, and the highest satisfaction of people's lives among all the cities in Jianghu State. It was not that no city wanted to imitate Xingzhou City, but they could only think about it. Such a transformation was equivalent to rebuilding a city. Not only would it waste a city's financial income for many years, but Yuzhou could not approve the project. At present, Xingzhou City was the only city in Jianghu State that needed this kind of ridiculously expensive transformation. It is indeed more exquisite than Xingzhou City, Qin Weibai said. She had been to Xingzhou City more than once. Bicycles could occasionally be seen on the ground of Xingzhou City. And in Worry-Free Villa. What was a bicycle? Perhaps most people did not have this concept. How many people are in the villa now? How big is the villa? Qin Weibai asked. The secretary thought for a moment and said accurately, the villa covers an area of about 40 square kilometers. Now there are 3,227 people who stay in the villa all year round, but there will definitely be more and more people in the future. Qin Weibai nodded and said, I like it here. The secretary pursed her lips and smiled. Her little face was shining with pride from the bottom of her heart. The motorcade finally stopped in the underground parking lot near the center of the small town. The secretary led Qin Weibai into the elevator. When the elevator door opened, they had already entered a single-family villa with an exclusive small courtyard. This is your exclusive elevator with fingerprint identification. This is your office and residence. Patriarch, if there is anything else you need or if there is anything you are not satisfied with, you can tell me and I will arrange it right away. The secretary said with a smile. Qin Weibai glanced at the decoration in the hall and nodded casually. What's your name? I am Lin Ying, Patriarch. It is my honor to serve you. There was a touch of intimacy in Lin Ying's voice. In the Lin clan, which was not completely isolated from the world, the freedom of most people was based on the responsibility of a small number of people. The Lin clan had Lin Fengting, so the headquarters of the Lin clan stood aloof from the world. But the Lin clan had more than Lin Fengting. Lin Ying was undoubtedly also the core member of the next generation of the Lin clan. The fact that she could be called the secretary of the patriarch of the Lin clan had already explained this. Standing in her position, he could see the whole dark world more clearly, so he naturally knew Qin Weibai better. That kind of perfection, that kind of coldness, that kind of dreamy, that kind of wisdom, that kind of strength, that kind of expression. She was the most perfect woman, the one and only. She was the goddess of the dark world, and she deserved it. So Lin Ying's words were not flattery or compliments. They were completely from the bottom of her heart. Qin Weibai replied with a and sat on the sofa. She took off the top hat on her head, casually combed her hair, and asked, when will the old patriarch come? About 2 hours later. Lin Ying said. The old patriarch referred to Lin Fengting. During this time, he had been staying in the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai had wanted to come to the headquarters of the Lin clan a month ago. Lin Fengting knew very well why she came here and reminded her that the situation of the person she wanted to see was very unstable. It was better to stay in Yuzhou to deal with some other things. Qin Weibai waited patiently for nearly a month and then received a call from Lin Fengting. Although they did not come to Switzerland together, they would arrive on the same day. Qin Weibai thought for a moment and said slowly, in this case, inform the representatives of the major branches that they don't need to come here now. At 7:00 in the evening, we'll have a meeting. I need to rest for a while. Okay. Lin Ying nodded and waited for a few seconds. Seeing that Qin Weibai had no other orders, she bowed slightly and left the villa. Qin Weibai was silent for a moment and reached out to Horsewoman. Horsewoman carefully put down a small backpack on her back, took out a square box from the backpack, and carefully placed it in front of Qin Weibai. Her eyes were a little complicated and excited. Qin Weibai looked at the box with a somewhat complicated expression. Thank you. Horsewoman suddenly spoke. Her tone was very sincere and serious. Since she got the body of the war god, she became more and more respectful to Qin Weibai. Even saint and military counselor became more and more respectful to her. Qin Weibai shook her head tiredly and said faintly, you shouldn't say thank you. Horsewoman was stunned. She smiled bitterly and did not speak. Do you know why I must have this half of the body of the war god? Qin Weibai said softly, if I give up this thing, I can get more things. For me in Emperor Dong's palace, the price that the Wang family of Beihai is willing to pay for this half of the body of the war god is even beyond your imagination. To save people. Horsewoman said respectfully. Then why should I save people? Qin Weibai raised the corner of her mouth slightly with a sneer. I don't know how to view my relationship with her, but if I say that I am the one who wants her dead the most, no one can object, right? Horsewoman's eyes froze. She looked at Qin Weibai and did not speak. There were too many seemingly incredible relationships that were difficult to define. She did not understand the current Qin Weibai, but she also understood the current Qin Weibai very well. She understood her pride. From this point of view, Qin Weibai was indeed the one who wanted her dead the most. This was a fact that could not be denied. Qin Weibai stood up and walked to the bedside. She looked at the sky of the Lin clan through the window and said softly, I don't owe her anything. She changed my fate, and I also changed her fate. We are even. Don't you think so? Horsewoman frowned and finally said yes. So when she wakes up, I want her to give my man back to me. I don't need her charity, but she owes me, and I want to get it back. Qin Weibai's delicate and dreamy face was expressionless, but her bright eyes flashed with incomparably clear stubbornness and pride. Me loving him and her asking me to love him are two different things. The clouds passed over the clear sky. Qin Weibai looked up at the blue sky, and her voice was soft but insistent. Horsewoman thought of a saying. The biggest enemy in everyone's life was no one else. Chapter 736. Lin Fengding's return was very low-key. Unlike the new patriarch who stepped into his own tribe for the first time, his return was a real home. Relatively speaking, the representatives of the major branches who came here were outsiders, so the representatives did not come to greet Lin Fengding. Even Lin Yuxian did not come. Only Qin Weibai stood on the grass outside the city with Horsewoman, watching the helicopter landing slowly and waiting silently. The helicopter landed in front of them. The roaring wind made Qin Weibai's long hair dance wildly. In the cold wind, Qin Weibai took a few steps forward. The sound of the wind faded. The door of the cabin opened. Lin Fengding, who was a little pale but in good spirits, came out and looked at Qin Weibai with a smile. Welcome back. Qin Weibai's tone was calm and natural. She stretched out her hand to Lin Fengding. Lin Fengding nodded with a smile. Looking at the tender white hand that she stretched out naturally, he raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Qin Weibai with playful eyes. I don't have so many problems with her. Qin Weibai said. It's really surprising. Lin Fengding smiled and held Qin Weibai's palm. He quietly looked at the sky of his family and was silent for a while. Then he whispered, it's better to be at home. I don't feel anything outside. Only when I come back can I feel tired. Qin Weibai said calmly, thank you for your hard work, sir. Lin Fengding suddenly smiled and said, Patriarch, let me introduce a friend to you. He turned to look at the cabin. At the door of the cabin, a young woman in a white antibacterial suit walked out of the cabin door and saw Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows little by little. Her face was too delicate. This small movement did not destroy her beauty, but it made her suddenly more indescribable fierceness and strength. She looked at her charming silver eyes and was silent for a while. Then she said, Beihai Silver Eyes? Nice to meet you, Boss Qin. Naylan Shuriying's tone was indifferent. It was not the kind of indifference that kept people 1,000 miles away, but a kind of indifference that did not care about anything. She lived in the core area of Mount Dibing all year round and was one of the most mysterious core members of the Wang family of Beihai. She did not know why Qin Weibai knew her, and she did not want to know. One after another, figures in white antibacterial suits came out from behind Naylan Shuriying. 3 men and 3 women, most of them middle-aged. Wang Junyi, Chen He, Sitiya, Song Qiu, Naylan Lingfeng, childhood. Qin Weibai's eyes swept over them one by one. Hello, doctors of Team 002. Naylan Shuriying's silver pupils suddenly shrank. The expressions of the 6 people behind her changed drastically. Everyone looked at Qin Weibai as if they had seen a ghost. Not a human, damn it. It was a ghost. They were the top researchers in the Beihai Biological Laboratory. The Wang family of Beihai had the strictest confidentiality measures for such top talents in a certain field. But now it seemed that the so-called confidentiality measures were nothing in front of Qin Weibai. She not only called out their names, but also directly called out their team number in the Wang family of Beihai Biological Laboratory. They didn't even dare to think about what this meant. Lin Fengding's expression also changed slightly before returning to normal. You want to save her? Qin Weibai glanced at Lin Fengding and said lightly. Aren't you here to save people as well? Lin Fengding said with a smile. Qin Weibai snorted and looked at Nayland Shuriying and Team 002 in front of her. What do you mean? To get a grasp of the situation. Team 002 will stay here. Lin Fengding said seriously, in this matter, the Beihai family is very sincere. The Wang family of Beihai is very sincere. They are really generous, Qin Weibai said calmly. There were many teams in the biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai. There were 6 people in a group and they were arranged according to their serial numbers. The order was clear and straightforward. The number at the front also indicated the importance and professional quality of the team in the laboratory. The 000 team was the team that developed the body of the war god. They were undoubtedly extremely important, but they also had strong limitations. Their life work had nothing to do with the research of other gene potions. The only thing they were responsible for was the body of the war god. As the leader of this generation of the biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai, Team 001 was led by Silver Eyes Nayland Shuriying of Beihai. Everyone in the team was a treasure to the Wang family of Beihai. They mainly developed the 3rd generation of immortality potions and improved some other cutting-edge potions of the Wang family of Beihai. The 002 team was the top main force of the biological laboratory. In terms of professionalism, they might not be as professional as 001, but they were extremely knowledgeable. They had no specific projects. Their biggest job was research and development. They developed new gene potions, made and improved existing potions, determined the use of some rare medicinal materials, and sometimes worked together with the 001 team to overcome technical bottlenecks. The 002 team was the real core of the Wang family of Beihai's biological laboratory. They were the link between the previous and the next. The Wang family of Beihai sent the 002 team to Carefree Heights this time, which showed their sincerity. You can think of it as the Wang family of Beihai's self-redemption. Lin Fengding said with a smile. Qin Weibai nodded to Nayland Shuriying, turned to her car, and said slowly, Summer solstice doesn't think so. Oh. Lin Fengding smiled gently. They are not sinners and don't need redemption. At least summer solstice doesn't think that the Wang family of Beihai is a sinner. In fact, they are not. Such great sincerity is nothing more than to increase the bargaining chips for compromise in the future. Qin Weibai opened the door and looked at Lin Fengding. Shall we go there now? Of course, every second counts. Lin Fengding took a deep breath, nodded, and sat in the passenger seat. Nayland Shuriying had already taken the 002 team into a business car. The car started slowly, entered the underground driveway of Carefree Heights, and stopped near the edge of the city. Lin Fengding personally led the way and entered his own villa. They took the special elevator. They entered the password. The elevator sank all the way for nearly 10 seconds before it stopped. Voice verification. Fingerprint verification. Body scan. Pupil scan. 3rd level password verification. After a series of tedious processes, the elevator door finally opened. What appeared in front of everyone was a metal passage shrouded in soft light. Is this the biological laboratory of the Lin clan? Nayland Shuriying, who had been silent, asked curiously. Yes. Lin Fengding nodded. Compared with the laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai, the scale is still a little smaller, and the equipment is slightly worse. The new equipment from the Wang family of Beihai is already on the way, and it will take about a week to arrive. Naylan Shuriying followed Lin Fengting out of the elevator, frowned, and said, only the new equipment in Beihai can record the most detailed data of the injured's body. The data of the current equipment may be biased. The deviation won't be very big. Dr. Naylan, I'll have to trouble you for the next week. When the new equipment arrives, we will give you the detailed data of the injured as soon as possible. Then someone will pick you up and take you to Xianyuan City in Tiannan. Lin Fengting said in a gentle voice. Naylan Shuriying hesitated and nodded. Xianyuan City in Tiannan. That was where she would work in the future. She would work for Dong Huang, who had been imprisoned in the desert prison, instead of for the Wang family of Beihai. This was the deal between Li Tianlan and Summer Solstice, or it could be said that it was one of the terms of the compromise of the Wang family of Beihai. She would leave Beihai and build a new biological laboratory for Emperor Dong's palace with several core technologies in the biological laboratory. This process would last for 10 years. After 10 years, she could return to Beihai. Naylan Shuriying had no choice. The group of people walked on the flat metal path. The more they walked forward, the more silent Qin Weibai became. The atmosphere seemed to become a little depressed in her silence. Pushing open the thick glass door at the end of the passage, a scene familiar to Naylan Shuriying and her Team 002 appeared in front of everyone. The clean and almost cold silver walls, the neatly hung screens, the multifunctional test bench, the electronic recorder, the detector, the large microscope, the multifunctional decomposition device, and the dormitories and small laboratories around the hall. Quiet, rigorous, neat, and professional. After leaving Beihai, Naylan Shuriying, who had been a little nervous, gradually relaxed. On such an occasion, her whole aura seemed to be changing. Where are the injured? She took the initiative to ask. Follow me. Lin Fengting nodded and continued to walk forward. He pushed open the door of the conference room, entered a coffee room in the conference room, and calmly opened a dark room in the coffee room. A dark passage appeared in front of everyone. Lin Fengting took the lead and walked in. The passage was not long. After a distance of dozens of meters, the environment in front of them became soft and bright again. What appeared in front of everyone was a round superalloy door without any gap. Two expressionless middle-aged women stood motionless on both sides of the door like statues. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other with solemn hearts. At the same time, they were curious about the identity of the person behind the door who needed such strict protection. Lin Fengting looked at the door in front of him, and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. He whispered, "Open the door." Two middle-aged women with extremely cold auras bowed slightly and entered a set of passwords at the same time. The superalloy door, which was strong enough to resist the bombing of missiles at close range, slowly turned to one side. An extremely warm breath gushed out of the space behind the door. "Please come in." Lin Fengting sighed and subconsciously glanced at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's expression was as calm as water. Lin Fengting walked in with his people, and the superalloy door slowly closed again. A huge glass cover appeared in front of everyone. Countless things like bubbles and liquids filled most of the space inside the glass cover. A young woman with her eyes closed was buried in it, revealing only a delicate and perfect dreamy face. It was an incomparably pale face, without a trace of blood. The paleness was almost transparent, with extreme morbidity. But it still couldn't hide the beauty of this face. She was devastatingly beautiful. She was an outstanding beauty. Her eyes were closed, as if she was immersed in the deepest dream, and her whole body had no breath. Everyone looked at this scene with their mouths agape. Naylan Shuriying's body suddenly shook. She stared for a long time with her eyes wide open. Then she turned her head in disbelief and looked at Qin Weibai. "Why are you looking at me?" Qin Weibai stared at Naylan Shuriying expressionlessly. Naylan Shuriying shook her head in confusion and said incredulously, "Who is she?" "She is the wounded person you need to treat." Chapter 737. Naylan Shireen turned her head again, looked at the woman in the glass cover, and took a deep breath. Countless incredible and absurd ideas kept flashing in her mind, and finally turned into disbelief. She took 2 steps forward subconsciously and reached out to touch the glass cover in front of her. Her eyes were a little dazed. The person in the cover lay quietly inside. Her pale, almost transparent, perfect face looked extremely delicate. She restrained her sharpness and extinguished her consciousness. That kind of fragility and helplessness were displayed in front of everyone's eyes. But she gave people a serene feeling. If death was an eternal sinking, she must have been really willing before falling into the darkness. Qin Weibai looked at it calmly, without any expression on her face, but her snow-white hands were clenched tightly. For many years, she had made countless plans, walked on the edge of the blade, mixed in conspiracies, and built her own general trend. The trip to Europe, the Samsara Palace, the 12 Super Masters, the extermination of Night Spirit, the Blue Sky Underworld, the Emperor Weapons Mountain, the decisive battle in Heaven Capital, the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Judgment Day, the Termination Day, Mormons, and the Eternal Sword. She said she had been happy. Qin Weibai believed her. But every time Qin Weibai saw her, she planned all of this in an extremely cautious manner. The strength that she showed to the outside world on the basis of countless plans made her an extremely dazzling woman in the dark world. But every time Qin Weibai saw her, she could only feel the extreme sense of exhaustion and expectation from her. She had really used up all her means, all her trump cards, and offered everything she had. The end of Eastern Europe and the end of the dark world. In the frenzied general trend, she personally pierced his chest, stained with blood, with all she had, what she missed, and what she was attached to, all her deep feelings and reluctance. Rising. Burning. The eternal sword. Countless obsessions completely ended at that moment. She seemed to have let go of a lot of things, but there was only one thing she could not let go. But it didn't matter. The entire dark world was almost buried with her. She officially took away an era. The shadows dissipated, the wind and rain stopped, and a sky without shadows was shrouding the person she could not let go of the most. He had his own radiance. All the meeting darkness was her own darkness. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and murmured softly, "How can you be so important?" Horsewoman and Lin Fengting glanced at her at the same time. Qin Weibai's voice gradually grew louder. "Why are you so important?" The knight's expression changed. Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes. Qin Weibai walked to the glass cover and looked at the transparent figure inside, who could be said to be infinitely close to death. She said very seriously, "I'm not convinced." The woman in the glass cover closed her eyes and did not respond. She was like the most exquisite and perfect work of art. Quiet, beautiful, gorgeous, dreamy, but without the slightest vitality. Qin Weibai turned to look at Naylan Shireen beside her and said in a tough tone, "Save her." Naylan Shireen glanced at Qin Weibai. She didn't know what the relationship between the two women inside and outside the glass cover was. After guessing for a while, she finally said, "I will do my best." A middle-aged woman in her 50s walked out from a secret door. She was holding a folder in her hand. When she saw the crowd surrounding the glass dome, she was stunned and frowned. Lin Fengting smiled and waved at her. "Sister, let me introduce you. This is Dr. Naylan Shireen from the Wang family of Beihai. She is the chief person in charge of the biological laboratory of Beihai. Dr. Naylan, this is my cousin, Lin Fengyue. She is currently in charge of the biological laboratory of the Lin clan." He did not introduce Qin Weibai. As the new patriarch of the Lin clan, although it was the first time for Qin Weibai to come to the Lin clan, a core figure like Lin Fengyue naturally knew her existence. "Hello, Dr. Naylan." Lin Fengyue took the initiative to reach out and shake hands with Naylan Shireen. The person in charge of the biological laboratory of the Lin clan was not beautiful. She was in her early 50s, and there were even some age spots on her face. Her hair was almost all white, and she looked gloomy and serious from head to toe. She obviously knew what Nayland Shuriying was here for, but she did not show any mercy when she spoke. She just said seriously, I thought Dr. Nayland and your team could do their best. It is said that the biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai is unparalleled in the world. I am not convinced. Dr. Nayland, I hope you can prove this to me. Nayland Shuriying nodded and did not take it seriously. I need the physical data and brainwave records of the injured, as well as the report of cell activity in the past 72 hours, blood tests, body x-rays, and your conclusions. Lin Fengyue took a deep look at her, handed the folder in her hand to Nayland Shuriying, and sighed, most of the things you want are here, please come with me. At present, the data of the injured are at the lowest point. Many of the data are even lower than the theoretical survival data. We have tried various methods, we have tried all kinds of methods. We have used a lot of recovery drugs, but it didn't work. The method you see now is the result of our best efforts. Nayland Shuriying looked back at the huge glass cover. The glass cover was naturally not glass. The things inside that looked like bubbles were naturally not bubbles either. This kind of huge transparent glass cover was mostly used in aerospace engineering. It was an extremely rare fusion metal that could form the best sealed space. The foam inside was a semi-solid nutrient solution that had a large amount of restorative drugs added into it. This nutrient solution was very airtight and easy to absorb. It was also at a constant temperature and was soft enough to not harm the injured person's body. Not only could it better maintain her almost completely exhausted vitality, but the greatest role that the nutrient solution could play was just maintenance. The vitality of the injured, even in the nutrient solution, was still declining little by little, but the speed was much slower than under normal circumstances. But no matter how slow it was, there would always be an end, and that would be real death. In fact, the Lin clan was busy saving the injured during this time, but their greatest efforts were not on how to let her recover, but on how to slow down the loss of her vitality in the nutrient solution all day long. We have already sent the first batch of body data to Beihai half a month ago, the second batch of data was sent a week ago, and the third batch of data was sent 3 days ago. Dr. Nayland, the data in your hand is from yesterday. I want to know if you have any ideas, even if it is some vague ideas. This injured person is very important to the Lin clan, and it is also very important for the improvement of our technology in the field of biology. Lin Fengyue led a group of people into her laboratory and spoke with a serious expression. Your thinking is wrong. Nayland Shuriying was silent for a moment. It doesn't work to slow down the loss of the injured person's vitality. It doesn't even make sense. At present, the most important thing is her body. The vitality of the injured person is already very low, and it is even the lowest data to maintain survival because her injury is too serious and her body is too poor. The reason why her vitality is constantly flowing away is that her body can no longer bear anything, including the vitality in her body. No one spoke. After nearly a minute, Lin Fengyue blinked and tentatively said, You mean, she is already dead? Nayland Shuriying said directly. Chapter 738. What nonsense are you talking about? Just as Nayland Shuriying's voice fell, Knight's somewhat angry voice suddenly sounded. Dr. Lin just said that she still has vitality. She fiercely glared at Nayland Shuriying. Her face was distorted and looked somewhat ferocious. But her body is already dead. Nayland Shuriying said seriously, vitality is the guarantee to support the survival of the body. As long as the body exists, vitality can't keep flowing away. The Lin clan's way of dealing with it is very professional. Under such circumstances, her vitality is still declining, which can only mean that her body is dead. That vitality is the last trace of activity of this body. A dead body naturally can't retain vitality. The Lin clan's current method is equivalent to forcibly keeping a person who is about to die, which is like defying the heavens. The knight's body shook violently, his face as pale as snow. Is there any other way? Lin Fengting said in a low voice. He had never thought that the situation would be so bad. Fuse. Nayland Shuriying said calmly, this is the only way I can think of to strengthen her already dead body and temporarily fuse her vitality with this body. The corners of Lin Fengyue's mouth twitched. In the end, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. Our Lin clan doesn't have such a technique. As far as I know, the so-called fusion technique is only in theory. Even if we can do it, the vitality in the injured person's body won't be enough to support this body. That vitality is too little for a dying person. Yes, so once the fusion is successful, the data we get will be even worse than it is now, much worse. She will also be closer to death than she is now, but that way, she can preserve the last bit of her life force in her body. Naylan Shuriying's voice grew calmer and calmer. Beads of sweat appeared on Lin Fengyue's forehead. It's worse than the current data, she whispered to herself with an ugly expression on her face, this state, neither dead nor alive. Naylan Shuriying said slowly, right now, the remaining vitality is not enough to support her life. Once the vitality completely fuses with the body, in the biological sense, she is no longer a living person, just not dead. How to fuse them? Lin Fengyue shook her head and said, there's no time. Naylan Shuriying turned to look at Qin Weibai. Before I came here, Aunt Xia Ji told me that you have half a body of the war god? She asked softly. The body of the god of war. Lin Fengting was stunned. Even he didn't know what it was. Qin Weibai glanced at Horsewoman. The knight took out the small square box from his bag and handed it to Naylan Shuriying. Are you confident? Qin Weibai said solemnly. It's not a matter of confidence. Naylan Shuriying shook her head, this is the only solution. But after the fusion, what's the difference between her and being dead? Qin Weibai's tone was almost interrogative. Perhaps even she herself did not know that her current mood was quite sensitive and agitated. The biggest difference is that she's not dead. Naylan Shuriying said honestly. This explanation was so powerful that Qin Weibai was speechless for a moment. She was not dead. That was the difference. However, the injured after the fusion was no longer considered to be alive. What I need is to heal her and make her recover. Qin Weibai said coldly. After the fusion, it's just to keep her from dying completely. This is the first step. The second step is activation. Naylan Shuriying said calmly. Activation? Qin Weibai's eyes lit up. The third generation of eternal life? Have you succeeded? Naylan Shuriying gave her a strange look and narrowed her eyes. No matter how indifferent she was to the world, she could not help but be curious at this time. The other party could call out the names of everyone in Team 002, and the moment she mentioned activation, she could think of the top secret of the Wang family of Beihai, the third generation of eternal life. How much did she know about the biological laboratory of Beihai? The main function of the body of the war god was fusion, which doubled the body's endurance. The third generation of eternal life activated vitality and doubled it. This was the method that Naylan Shuriying thought of. First, she used the body of the war god to integrate the vitality of the injured with her body, and then used the third generation of eternal life to completely activate the vitality in her body to achieve the expected state of awakening. Then there was a long period of cultivation and recovery. This was also the only feasible way at present. At present, the half of the body of the war god is only a semi-finished product and can only be fused. As for strengthening the body's endurance, the effect is much weaker. The third generation of eternal life also has many technical bottlenecks, even more than the bottlenecks of the body of the war god. Naylan Shuriying said softly. So? Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes. So, drag it on. Naylan Shuriying said, first fuse, so that she will not die, and then wait for the third generation of eternal life. Qin Weibai's body trembled, and she said hoarsely, how long do we have to wait? I don't know. Naylan Shuriying shook her head. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe longer. She looked at Qin Weibai, and there was some sympathy in her bright silver eyes. At that time, maybe you will be old, and so will Li Tianlan. But now she is in a sealed state, and she can maintain it for a long time. Have you ever seen a science fiction movie? Some astronauts can sleep for decades in the cabin during the spacecraft's exploration of space, and their body functions will not deteriorate, and their appearance will not change. It's as if the sleeping time did not exist. Nalan Shuring said softly, now we don't have such technology, but this nutrition cabin can be close to this level. Coupled with the body of the war god and her current strange state, as long as the nutrition cabin is continuous, she can sleep for at least decades without any change. I think by that time, no matter how difficult it is, the third generation of eternal life should have been successfully developed. No one spoke. Everyone was silent. This method was feasible. But the key was whether Qin Weibai could afford to wait, whether the people sleeping in the nutrition cabin could afford to wait, and whether Li Tianlan could afford to wait. When they woke up, countless eras might have passed. Everyone they cared about, loved, and cared about would have become old, or even become yellow soil and history. What did it feel like? Regardless of whether it was to those who were waiting or those who were asleep, this was an unimaginable cruelty. Qin Weibai stood there and was silent for a long time. It won't be that long. A tired voice suddenly sounded. Lin Fengting looked at Nalan Shuring. The third generation of eternal life can't break through the technical bottleneck at present because there is not enough immortality, that is, a few core materials are missing. His tone was a little low. I will find a way to get these materials and speed up your research process. Everyone knew what he would think of. They would either find them or grab them. That was the only way. Nalan Shuring wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. In the end, she didn't speak and just looked at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai didn't speak either. After a long time, Nalan Shuring said softly, I understand how you feel, but time can't be delayed. The vitality in the patient's body is passing away every moment. The later the decision is made, the worse her condition will be after the fusion. Lin Fengting looked at Qin Weibai and then at Nalan Shuring. He frowned slightly and didn't speak. Qin Weibai raised her head and slowly glanced at everyone. After a long time, she nodded and said, I see. She slowly turned around and walked out of the laboratory. Her back was still slim and perfect, but it seemed to be covered with a layer of exhaustion. I see. Nalan Shuring was stunned and stood still. The door of the small laboratory slowly closed. Nalan Shuring turned to look at Lin Fengting. Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes and looked at her. His eyes were extremely sharp, as if they were warm, but also cold. Nalan Shuring subconsciously avoided his eyes. Her heart is a little confused. Lin Fengting said slowly, his scrutinizing eyes constantly falling on Nalan Shuring. I can understand. Nalan Shuring took a deep breath and her tone was still calm. But I didn't. Doctor, I can understand your position, but lies are meaningless here, do you understand? Lin Fengting's voice became gentler and gentler. I'm telling the truth. Nalan Shuring's fingers trembled slightly, her situation is indeed very serious. I know that. Lin Fengting said lightly, this is the truth, but the third generation of eternal life doesn't necessarily need to let the people waiting for her for a lifetime, or in other words, the third generation of eternal life she needs doesn't necessarily need to wait for a lifetime. The semi-finished body of the god of war can stabilize her, so the next 3 generations of eternal life may not necessarily be the finished product, right? Nalan Shuring was silent for a while and said calmly, I will try my best. Lin Fengting looked at her. His eyes were calm and deep. Nalan Shuring stopped talking. Lin Fengting nodded and left the small laboratory. He didn't know if what he said was right, but if this was the truth, he could understand. Nalan Shuring, Team 002, and the body of the god of war were the sincerity of the Wang family of Beihai. Maybe it was not the so-called redemption, but they really wanted to protect themselves. Once Li Tianlan walked out of the desert prison, the development of Emperor Dong's palace would be unstoppable in a short time. If Li Tianlan went to the peak, the Wang family of Beihai could only bow their heads and compromise. Then the wounded lying here at this time would become the biggest obstacle between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. These sincerity were the means by which the Wang family of Beihai tried to weaken this obstacle. As for the process, the Wang family of Beihai could choose and even control it. Letting the wounded recover was a process. But in this case, even if she recovered, Li Tianlan might still have a grudge in his heart. What if he didn't let her recover but gave Li Tianlan enough hope? For example, time and procrastination. Letting her recover was tantamount to taking the initiative to compromise and handing the initiative to Li Tianlan. If he didn't let her recover and delayed indefinitely, it could let Li Tianlan see the hope of her recovery, which meant that the initiative was always in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan would compromise. He could only compromise. Lin Fengting's face was a little gloomy. If this was true, he could understand the motive of the Wang family of Beihai to do so, but he would not accept it. And the truth and falsehood between this was undoubtedly the most difficult to distinguish. He thought silently, closed the door, and came to the huge glass cover. Qin Weibai was standing there, looking up at the woman in the glass cover who was strong, powerful, glorious, but now could not control her own fate. She was in a daze. Lin Fengting stood there and watched for a long time, without moving. After a long time, in the almost frozen picture, Qin Weibai reached out her hand and gently knocked on the glass cover in front of her. She said slowly, "I know why you did this." Her voice was so soft that it was almost a whisper. You ended everything and tried to escape what you always didn't want to face, because you were worried that Tianlan would hate you. She was silent for a long time, looking at the unresponsive woman inside, and whispered, "But have you ever thought that if you died like this, when Tianlan found out the truth, who would he hate? Would he hate himself?" Her slender white fingers pressed hard on the glass cover, and her whole palm turned pale because of excessive force. "I hope you can recover," she whispered, "please." Chapter 739. At the beginning of winter in Yuzhou, Dongqing Wudi ended another meaningless parliamentary meeting and returned to the Bai family's manor in the cold temperature. It seemed that because of the season, the Bai family's manor was getting colder and colder. The large manor looked luxurious, but it was almost desolate. As the speaker of Yuzhou, Bai Zhanfang rarely lived in the manor. Most of the time, he stayed in the first building of the council compound in Yuzhou. Bai Qingxian, who married Dongqing Wudi, either returned to Zhongyuan or Liaodong and rarely came back. Bai Qingxian's son and daughter were studying abroad, and his wife accompanied them to study all the year round. She rarely came home. Most of the time, Bai Qingxian lived alone in the manor in Qingshan, looking extremely lonely. For Bai Qingxian, in addition to his wife and son coming home from abroad, Dongqing Wudi's visit was the most desirable thing. Many years ago, Dongqing Wudi and Bai Qingxian were in love with each other. After they got married, Dongqing Wudi and his brother-in-law had a deep personal relationship. Over the years, the relationship between Bai Qingxian and Dongqing Wudi had become more and more rigid, which directly led to the growing rift between the Bai family and the Dongqing clan. Now Dongqing Wudi and his wife were gradually reconciled. Dongqing Wudi was transferred to Yuzhou from the Border Control Corps. Dongqing Wudi would come to the manor whenever he had something to do. One was the executive minister of the army headquarters, and the other was the deputy secret chief of the army headquarters. They would have a drink and talk about things that were inconvenient to say in the building of the army headquarters. The process was quite pleasant. Every time this happened, Bai Qingxian would cook a few simple dishes. When Dongqing Wudi walked into the living room, Bai Qingxian just put the last plate of shredded ear salad on the tea table in front of him. "I tell you, old Lu from Liaodong brought me 2 bottles of wild ginseng wine when he came to the army headquarters last time. It's a great tonic. You should have 1 bottle, but I withheld it. Now I take it out, so it's not embezzlement." Bai Qingzhao said with a smile and took out 2 bottles of wine from the storage room on the side. In fact, there were 2 large jars, each of which weighed at least dozens of kilograms. Dongqing Wudi walked over, sniffed the fragrance of the wine in the air, and took a look at the jars. There were some wild ginseng and some other precious medicinal materials soaked in the jars, giving off a very mellow smell. Dongxing Wudi shook his head and said, "Old Lu needs to change his addiction to alcohol. Otherwise, with his qualifications, how could he be stuck in this position? If we delay any longer, we won't have another chance." Old Lu's full name was Lu Tingbo. He was a lieutenant general of Jianghu State, the deputy chief of staff of the Northern Theater of Operations, and also the commander of the Liaodong military. He was slightly younger than Dongxing Wudi and was Dongxing Wudi's absolute confidant. When Dongxing Wudi entered Yuzhou a few years ago, he originally wanted to push him up. A few months ago, when he traded with the Wang family of Beihai for the Border Control Corps, he also had this intention. But he tried twice in a row and failed in the end. There were many reasons, but his addiction to alcohol was also a more important one. "I don't think so." Bai Qingzhao picked up an emerald spoon and scooped 20,000 bottles of wine. He shook his head and said, "At this time, plus old Lu's age, it's a victory for him to keep his current position for another term." Dongxing Wudi took a sip of wine sullenly, frowned, and said nothing. "The meeting didn't go well?" Bai Qingzhao asked. It had been nearly 4 months since Li Tianlan was imprisoned in the desert prison. Autumn had passed, and the cold winter enveloped Yuzhou. The atmosphere of the entire Yuzhou had become more and more depressing in 4 months. Bai Qingzhao couldn't remember how many council meetings had been held. The swords and sabers between the giants had almost filled the entire Jianghu state. The interior of the desert prison was still calm, but the entire Jianghu state had been really turbulent, and the situation was changing almost all the time. Today, Qi Beizong was invited to attend the meeting. Dongxing Wudi was silent for a while, then said in a low voice. Bai Qingzhao suddenly raised his eyebrows, feeling a little surprised. Qi Beizong was Qi Mulan's adoptive father, the top boss behind the Special Warfare Group, and the former minister of the army headquarters. It should have been a big deal that he was invited to attend the meeting of the giants. As the deputy secret minister of the army headquarters, it was impossible for Bai Qingzhao not to know the news. But in fact, he really didn't receive any notice. The task force? Bai Qingzhao gently tested the waters. Humph. Dongxing Wudi snorted and said gloomily, "The reports are all the same. There is no concrete evidence. I suggest that Tianlan continue to be imprisoned." Bai Qingzhao nodded. This was a normal phenomenon. In fact, suggesting that Li Tianlan continue to be imprisoned was the protection of the giant group and the southeast group for him. This also meant that at least in the power configuration within the task force, the giant group and the southeast group had the advantage. At least in the suggestions that the task force had reported several times, there had been no suggestion to directly execute Li Tianlan. As the game went on, the investigation went on. The task force of the Mulan treason case had become more and more luxurious. Today, 4 months later, Dongxing Wudi personally served as the team leader of the task force. Gu Qianxuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, served as the executive deputy team leader. Yi Dongxing, the deputy minister of the army headquarters and the chief of general staff, served as the deputy team leader. In fact, Yi Dongxing was the leader in charge of the daily affairs of the task force. Everyone was confident about his ability. Bai Qingzhao looked at Dongxing Wudi in surprise. Things were still under control. Why did Dongxing Wudi look gloomy? Qi Beizong suggested that Gu Changjiang join the task force as the deputy team leader. Dongxing Wudi drank the wine and said quietly, "Zhou Yunhai expressed his support, and the meeting has passed." Gu Changjiang was one of the backbone forces of Kunlun City. 2 months ago, he was officially appointed as the minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters of Jianghu State, at the same level as the councillors. Moreover, he got the ticket to enter the conference room at the plenary meeting held by Jianghu State last month. Wei Kunlun, the former minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters, was considered no longer suitable for this position. As for the reason, it was naturally very simple. Today, Wei Kunlun was not only the lord of Mount Shu but also the deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace. Such a figure could be described as a real towering tree with deep-rooted roots in the southwest. Tiannan and the southwest bordered. No one could rest assured that Wei Kunlun was put in this position. Regarding this appointment, even the two magnates of the southeast group expressed their support. But it didn't last long. Half a month ago, Fireman, who had woken up, was appointed as the Minister of the Southeast Special Warfare Supervision Department and returned to Jianghu. On the same day, Qingye of the Li family was appointed as the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Security of Zhongzhou State, which was regarded as taking over the position left by Qi Mulan. The Southeast Group also expressed its support. With this advance and retreat, it could be seen that the balance that the four groups had tried to maintain was becoming more and more fragile. There was no doubt that Gu Changjiang's entry into the task force was an aggressive move by the Prince Group and the academics. This proposal was put forward by Qi Beizong. Obviously, during the time when Gu Xingyun was recuperating and silent, Qi Beizong had already done the work of most people in the Special Warfare Group. They, who had been drifting away from the Prince Group, seemed to be getting closer to each other again. The tsunami-like pressure had become clearer and stronger with the faster and faster personnel appointments. Bai Qingzhao held the wine in his hand and thought about it seriously. Then he slowly shook his head and said, "It's okay. Yi Dongxing can stand it." There was no doubt about Yi Dongxing's ability, and none of the major groups would doubt it. As the god of army of Zhongzhou State, he was originally a powerful figure pushed by the Southeast Group to compete with Dongqing Wudi. At the most intense moment of the competition between the two, Yi Dongxing's voice and recognition at the top were no worse than Dongqing Wudi's. A few years ago, if the giant group and the academics hadn't cooperated too firmly, even if Dongqing Wudi could take the position, the process would not be as simple as it was now. In order to stop Yi Dongxing, the giant group was destined to pay more. Judging from the current situation, Dongqing Wudi was in the prime of his life, and the possibility of Yi Dongxing going further was not very big. If there was no accident, the next giant candidates pushed by the Southeast Group should be Speaker Wen Siyuan of Beihai and Speaker Wang Qinglei of Wuyue. But it was basically no problem for Yi Dongxing to continue to stay in this sensitive position for 1 or even 2 terms. How could such a figure, a reckless man like Gu Changjiang, have any influence on him? Dongqing Wudi gritted his teeth and snorted. He seemed to want to get angry, but in the end, he became a little helpless. It's certain that Yi Dongxing can control the task force, but the key is, can the Southeast Group and the Wang family of Beihai still stand it? They had been playing for 4 months. Could the Southeast Group and the Wang family of Beihai still stand it? It seemed that there was no need for any answer at all. But when Bai Qingzhao heard this sentence, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. What do you mean? His expression became extremely serious. How can this kind of thing be up to them? They have to stand it even if they can't. That's true. Dongqing Wudi took a big gulp of wine and said sullenly, but if they really can't stand it, what can they do? He reached out and picked up a piece of tomato, but he did not put it in his mouth. Feeling the spiciness of the wine and the fragrance of medicine in his mouth, he was silent for a while and whispered, "Something happened in Jianghu." Su Xinghe. Bai Qingzhao's body suddenly shook. Dongqing Wudi smiled bitterly and did not speak. Bai Qingzhao's face was a little uncertain. 3 months ago, the fall of Chang Wansheng, the deputy governor of Beihai province, marked the official attack of Zhongzhou State on Beihai, but no one took it seriously. Chang Wansheng fell and was taken away by the supervisory department of Beihai, which meant that the Wang family of Beihai still firmly controlled Beihai. Besides, Chang Wansheng was not a councillor of Beihai. He ranked low in the provincial government and could not be ignored, but it was not too important. 2 months ago, the Ministry of Personnel and the Supervisory Department of Zhongzhou State received a real name report from Jiangnan. Then the 2 major departments sent an inspection team to Jiangnan, the core position of the Southeast Group. Then a storm brewed in Jiangnan. In more than a month, the storm had become bigger and bigger. At present, more than 20 officials in Jiangnan had been involved. 5 days ago, a deputy governor in Jiangnan was directly taken down, removed from office, and investigated. It was not until this time that people realized that the academics and the prince group directly took action against Su Xinghe. Su Xinghe was now the speaker of Jianghu, and before that, he was the governor of Jiangnan. In 5 days, it was obvious that someone had raised the issue of Su Xinghe at the board meeting that had just ended. Bai Qingzhao took a deep breath, and his heart was extremely turbulent. If this was the counterattack from the academics and the prince group, then no one had expected that the counterattack would be so fierce. They directly took action against the speaker of the province. Jianghu state had a territory of tens of millions of square kilometers and a population of more than 1 billion, but there were less than 40 speakers of the province. They were the real border conquerors, and they were also the most valued position by the parliament and the major groups. Even in the province, the weight of the governor was far less than that of the speaker. Such a position had always been the position that the major groups had fought for with all their might. Another meaning of fighting for it with all their might was naturally to protect it with all their might. The game had just begun, but they directly took action against such a figure, which meant that the game had entered a white-hot stage, and the danger had almost rushed directly to everyone's face with cold killing intent. Could the Southeast group withstand it? The Southeast group and the Giant group were in the honeymoon period of cooperation. What should the Giant group's attitude be on this matter? Bai Qingzhao thought about it and suddenly froze. He glanced at Dongqing Wudi. Dongqing Wudi was also looking at him, and his eyes were extremely deep. Bai Qingzhao realized the key to this matter. How should the Giant group take a stand on this matter? Obviously, the cause of this game was Li Tianlan's killing of Qi Mulan's family. Because of the special relationship with Tiannan, whether intentionally or unintentionally, Li Tianlan had become the heart of this game. The academics and the prince group both hoped to use Li Tianlan to establish their power and disintegrate Beihai province more smoothly. As long as they took down Li Tianlan, the parliament might find a reason to take down the speaker of Beihai. This touched the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai. The speaker of Beihai had always been directly appointed by Mount Dibing. That was why the Giant group and the Wang family of Beihai had joined hands. But now, the academics and the Giant group had temporarily suppressed the matter of Li Tianlan and did not take a stand. Instead, they bypassed this matter and directly took action against Su Xinghe. What about the Giant group? Support the Southeast group? This matter, at least on the surface, had nothing to do with Li Tianlan. Once Dongqing Wudi came forward to support it, it meant that the two sides would join hands in more fields. This also meant that in the next game against the Wang family of Beihai, the Giant group had already stood on the side of the Wang family of Beihai, so it would face more pressure from the parliament. This was undoubtedly the situation that the entire Giant group did not want to see. They joined hands with the Southeast group just to protect Li Tianlan, that was all. As for the next game and the disintegration of the Wang family of Beihai, Dongqing Wudi was actually on the side of the academics. After all, this matter was a good thing for Jianghu state. Dongqing Wudi's greatest support for Beihai was limited to not participating. It was impossible for him to join hands with the Wang family of Beihai. Su Xinghe's matter had nothing to do with Li Tianlan, so it was difficult for Dongqing Wudi to take a stand. But if he did not take a stand, it would form a huge crack in the cooperation between the two sides. The most important thing was that the academics and the prince groups still did not take a stand on Li Tianlan's issue. But they took action against Su Xinghe, which gave the Giant group another chance. Not to mention Li Tianlan. Zhou Yuanshan, the real leader of the next generation of the Giant group, was now the governor of Jianghu. If Su Xinghe fell, Zhou Yuanshan was likely to be the biggest beneficiary. And the key to this matter seemed to lie in how the Giant group would choose. It's a dilemma. Bai Qingzhao glanced at Dongqing Wudi and suddenly asked, what did Senior Zhou say? Zhou Mulan was now also one of the directors. As the leader of the Giant group and Dongqing Wudi's predecessor, the opinion of Zhou Mulan, who was about to retire, was undoubtedly crucial. He didn't say anything. Dongqing Wudi shook his head and frowned more tightly. Bai Qingzhao narrowed his eyes. He said nothing. Chapter 740. Dongxing Wudi could understand why Zhou Mulan said nothing. However, just because he could understand it didn't mean that he wouldn't feel troubled. In fact, no matter when, no matter what group it was impossible for the internal structure to be monolithic. Where there were people, there would be politics. There would be different ideas and different demands. For a country, a president who could unify the different voices in the country was an outstanding president. For a group, a leader who could unify the different voices in the group was an outstanding leader. There were different groups in the country. There were different groups within the group. Balance and compromise were topics that could never be avoided if one wanted to have a common voice and allow a country or group to develop smoothly. Zhou Mulan was one of the veteran leaders of the giant group, but he was also Zhou Yuanshan's father. In such a sensitive situation, if Su Xinghe failed, Zhou Yuanshan was likely to reach the top in Jianghu. He was trained as the next leader of the giant group. If Zhou Yuanshan, who was only 36 years old this year, could reach the top in Jianghu, in the following time, his huge age advantage could make him manage his team better and strive for the number one position in 20 years. Zhou Mulan's term was less than 3 years away. At this time, if he could push Zhou Mulan up, he would definitely not hesitate. He had given Dongxing Wudi a lot of face by refraining from making a clear statement at the meeting. "Where's Dad?" Bai Qingzhao suddenly asked. After such a thing happened at the meeting, it was impossible for Bai Zhanfang to return to the council yard in Yuzhou. This matter seemed to have nothing to do with the giant group, but it might be related to the future pattern of the giant group. Who could be careless? He's a guest in the Hidden Dragon Sea's 5th building. Dongxing Wudi took out a cigarette, lit it, and handed one to Bai Qingzhao. Bai Qingzhao was stunned and felt relieved. The 5th building in the Hidden Dragon Sea was called Cunning Pavilion, where Zhou Mulan lived. As one of the 9 directors, Dongxing Wudi naturally had a residence in the Hidden Dragon Sea. The 3rd building, Glowing Pavilion, was prepared for Dongxing Wudi. However, Dongxing Wudi spent most of his time in the army headquarters building and rarely went there. Bai Qingzhao pondered. As soon as the meeting ended, Bai Zhanfang went to Zhou Mulan's place. It was extremely important for them to reach an agreement. Your attitude is also very important. Bai Qingzhao thought for a moment. What do you think about Su Xinghe? It's not easy for me to talk about this. Dongxing Wudi shook his head helplessly. It's hard to guess the president's attitude. If you don't speak, then the Southeast group, there will be problems. But if it's just once, it's not a big problem. As you said, the Wang family of Beihai has no way out. If they can't stand it, they have to stand it. I'm silent this time. Even if the Wang family of Beihai is dissatisfied, they won't say much. But the problem is, what about the future? Now they had bypassed the problem of Tianlan and started to attack the Southeast group. Su Xinghe was the first one. Who knew who the second one would be? If we continue to remain silent, then what is the so-called cooperation? Bai Qingzhao took a deep breath and muttered, if this continues, who knows how long it will take. If this matter is suppressed by Li Huaqing, his prestige will be damaged, but it can actually destroy our relationship with the Southeast. I don't know how many years Tianlan will have to stay in the desert. Dongxing Wudi did not speak. I have 2 suggestions. First, we must let the task force have some concrete evidence. Secondly, we have to find a way to test the president's attitude. He has the involvement of the academics, and they are plotting something big in this matter. There might be a chance. Bai Qingzhao said slowly, word by word. It's useless. Dongxing Wudi shook his head. The task force is a cover. How can we find evidence of Qi Mulan's treason? Even if there is, evidence isn't the deciding factor at the level of the parliament. The establishment of the task force is just a way for both sides to take a step back in order to save face. What about the president's attitude? Bai Qingzhao put out his cigarette. Dongxing Wudi's expression was a little gloomy. He pondered in silence for a long time before slowly saying, if you were the president, what would you choose? Bai Qingzhao was stunned. He did not quite understand. He subconsciously shook his head and said, I don't know. He bypassed Tianlan and attacked Beihai, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace. In this way, his choices are limited. First, he was waiting for me to come to him. On the matter of Tianlan, he took a step back and announced that Qi Mulan had committed treason and Tianlan was innocent. We both reached a compromise and gave enough benefits to the academics. In this way, we, the Prince Group and the Academy will join hands to suppress the Southeast Group. The Wang family of Beihai will definitely lose. Bai Qingzhao glanced at Dongqing Wudi and waited for him to continue. Second, an indescribable brilliance flashed through Dongqing Wudi's eyes, and his voice became a little low. Second, we take down Su Xinghe and let Yuanshan take the position. He will come to us on his own initiative and promise to fully support Yuanshan in the next 20 years to let him take that position. As for the conditions, he twitched the corner of his mouth and said coldly, we give up Tianlan. Bai Qingzhao sucked in a breath of cold air and stood up abruptly, almost knocking over the tea table. The wine in the small celadon bowl shook violently and spilled out. Fully support Zhou Yuanshan and give up Li Tianlan? Li Huaqing's choice was infinitely magnified in Bai Qingzhao's mind in an instant. If he chose this proposal, he would not talk to Dongqing Wudi at all. He would go directly to Zhou Mulan. Zhou Mulan originally wanted to support Li Tianlan, but obviously he was more willing to support his son. If Li Huaqing promised to support Zhou Yuanshan and asked Zhou Mulan to give up Li Tianlan, in Zhou Mulan's eyes, Li Tianlan would become a stumbling block for Zhou Yuanshan. What would he choose? Bai Qingzhao paced back and forth, suddenly turned around, gritted his teeth, and said, why don't we just support Su Xinghe? Su Xinghe didn't stand upright and was caught by others. How can we support him? He will definitely leave Jianghu. It's just a matter of time. If we support Su Xinghe, Yuanshan definitely can't go up. The new speaker of Jianghu won't even be from the southeast. Once the people from the Academy or the Prince Group go to Jianghu, the situation in Jianghu will be more complicated. If something goes wrong in Jianghu, Ning Qianqing can't do anything alone in Tiannan. If we want to survive, we can only deepen the cooperation with the Southeast Group, which means that we have to play with the Prince Group and the academics for Beihai. If we lose, what's the benefit if we win? Dongqing Wudi's voice became more and more dull. Bai Qingzhao stopped talking. In the fight within the rules, there would always be some traps. Although he knew it was a trap, he had to get caught in it and couldn't find any way out. At this time, compromise and concession were the only things he could do in the trap. But the key was that in this trap, the giant group didn't even have many choices to compromise. As for giving up Li Tianlan, there was no option. Without this option, the giant group was now trapped. Bai Qingzhao really didn't expect that the counterattack of the academics and the Prince Group would be so fierce. This time, the giant group was almost pushed to the corner. Damn it, this move is really vicious. Bai Qingzhao gritted his teeth and couldn't help but swear. Not really. I just took advantage of the situation. Dongqing Wudi waved his hand. At first, they didn't expect that we would cooperate with the Southeast Group so quickly, so they set up the task force and sent Tianlan to the desert. Now they come back to their senses and make a move. Naturally, they are well prepared. Su Xinghe is difficult. Is there no way at all? Bai Qingzhao didn't want to give up. No. Dongqing Wudi shook his head. He suddenly hesitated and said, there is no effective way, but there are some things that we can try. Where is the entry point? Bai Qingzhao asked. It's on the president. Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and suddenly said, I'm going to inspect the Beihai Corps in the near future. It's time to have a good talk with summer solstice. If the Wang family of Beihai can put down its pride, this matter may turn around. I still don't quite understand. Bai Qingzhao's eyes were a little blank. The president. Dongqing Wudi said slowly, he doesn't have much time. Bai Qingzhao lowered his head and thought for a long time. Then he said with some uncertainty, you mean you want to support the president? No, no, it's not the right time. It's too early. It's not too early. An old voice suddenly sounded at the door. Bai Zhanfang, the chairman of Yuzhou, walked in and said blandly, "The matter about Su Xinghe won't come to a conclusion in a short time. If we can delay this period of time, we can almost take action." Dad. Dad. Bai Qingzhao and Dongqing Wudi stood up at the same time. Bai Zhanfang waved his hand and motioned for them to sit down. In terms of position, Dongqing Wudi was a director and could be said to be the leader of Bai Zhanfang, a member of parliament. But at home, as a father-in-law, Bai Zhanfang was naturally the most powerful. Invincible is the right idea. Bai Zhanfang said slowly, "In this regard, Qingzhao is still a little worse. No matter how many times I say it, he is still a little worse. It's a matter of structure. In this regard, even Yuan Shan is much better than you." Bai Qingzhao coughed dryly and felt a little embarrassed. He was now a general of Zhongzhou State and the Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters. But at home, he was the father. Bai Zhanfang had always said that he was not good at structure and was even inferior to his sister Bai Qingqian. He had heard this many times. The opponent's move this time is very powerful. If you can't resist it, don't resist it. It's better to see what you can do to fight back. Bai Zhanfang took a sip of wine and sighed. In any case, in politics, the initiative is the most important. You can't be led by the nose. That way, you can't achieve anything. They want to deal with the Southeast Group and Tianlan. If you can't stop them, let them do it. If you can't stop them, don't do it. The best way is for them to fight their own battles, and we will fight ours. If you can't resist the opponent's attack, you will definitely lose. If you can't resist it, then change the direction according to your own ideas and fight for the initiative. Only in this way can you have a chance to turn defeat into victory. Bai Qingzhao was silent for a long time before he bowed slightly and said respectfully, "Father, you're right." Bai Zhanfang did not speak and ate silently. A lot of things happened tonight, and he needed to think carefully. "Dad, do you think my method is feasible?" Dongqing Wudi asked seriously. "It's necessary to try, and the probability of success is not low. No matter who it is, no matter what position it is, there are some things that can't be let go. Since it's a weakness, it can be used." Bai Zhanfang said lightly. "It's just that in this way, the Wang family of Beihai will lose face, and even many plans will be greatly affected. Their future direction will be adjusted because of this." Bai Qingzhao felt a little emotional. Throughout the history of Zhongzhou State, in hundreds of years, it was not enough for the Wang family of Beihai to bow down and bow down. How many times had they taken the initiative to slap themselves in the face? This was even the first time. This is inevitable. In this case, how can they not make some concessions? As for the future direction, they are qualified to adjust the direction after they lose face. I'm afraid that Summer Solstice and even Wang Tianzong have been looking forward to this opportunity to lose face for a long time. This is not a bad thing for them. Dongqing Wudi laughed. "This is not good for us." Bai Qingzhao cautiously said, "Yi Dongqing, hey, it's hard to deal with." Bai Zhanfang shook his head and sighed softly, but he did not speak. He had said what he should say. What else could he say? In terms of personal ability, vision, and even quality in all aspects, Bai Qingzhao was at least the best. Bai Zhanfang had always had expectations for his son, but Bai Qingzhao had always been slightly flawed in terms of breadth of mind. He cared too much about immediate gains and losses and lacked some spirit of looking down on the world. Bai Zhanfang had tried hard for this, but he did not get any good response. On the contrary, his daughter, Bai Qingqian, was graceful and generous. Although she was a woman, Bai Zhanfang was very satisfied with her, which could barely make up for his regret. Yuan Shan did a good job tonight. Bai Zhanfang was silent for a while and spoke softly, with undisguised appreciation in his tone. "Yuan Shan?" Dongqing Wudi was stunned. "Did he come to Yuzhou?" "No, but he called the hidden dragon sea directly." I guess he will call you soon. Bai Zhanfang laughed softly, and the appreciation in his eyes became more and more obvious. Soon after the meeting, Zhou Yuanshan called Zhou Mulan directly and explained some of his views in detail on the phone. Between father and son, there were many thorough words. He was Zhou Mulan's son, and he did his father's ideological work for his own future. His identity was more useful than anyone else. The phone call lasted for nearly 40 minutes. Bai Zhanfang had been waiting on the side. It could be seen that Zhou Mulan was greatly touched. After hanging up the phone, he naturally told Bai Zhanfang what to say. Zhou Yuanshan's second call was to Ji Wenzhang, a counselor of Zhongzhou State and the minister of the Ministry of Supervision. In the face of the leader of the Wang family of Beihai, Zhou Yuanshan, as the governor of Jianghu, was not polite at all. He might not be furious, but his words were extremely fierce. On the phone, he even asked whether the parliament believed in Jianghu or not. Ji Wenzhang was directly contradicted, but he was not unhappy at all. Zhou Yuanshan's attitude was undoubtedly what he needed most. The problem in Jiangnan was getting bigger and bigger. There were already voices in the Ministry of Supervision that an inspection team would be sent to Jianghu. Zhou Yuanshan's call could be said to have helped him a lot and relieved his pressure to a considerable extent. Zhou Yuanshan's third call was directly to President Li Huaqing. He said openly and secretly that Jianghu needed stability. He was the successor of the giant group. At this time, his attitude of protecting Su Xinghe was extremely clear and firm. Such a move had too many unusual meanings, especially when the relationship between Zhou Yuanshan and Su Xinghe was not harmonious. Zhou Yuanshan's righteous words, regardless of the immediate gains and losses, were bound to be unanimously recognized by a considerable part of the Southeast Group's forces. After Ji Wenzhang hung up the phone, he called Zhou Mulan and praised Zhou Yuanshan greatly. It could also be seen that the Southeast Group's attitude toward Zhou Yuanshan's call could also be seen. Bai Zhanfang smiled. At this point in time, there was still a long way to go before 20 years later. It was too early to say that there would be a struggle between the giants in the future, and even earlier to say that there would be a presidential struggle in the future. If the competition between the dazzling next generation like Wang Jingxin and Zhou Yuanshan was not obvious before then, after tonight's call, Zhou Yuanshan had clearly taken a half step ahead. Dongxing Wudi poured a small bowl of wine for Bai Zhanfang. Bai Zhanfang picked it up and put it to his mouth, but did not drink it. He was silent for a long time before he said again, "Yuanshan is good. It's too early to talk about this," Dongxing Wudi said with a smile. Bai Zhanfang glanced at him and nodded. He understood what Dongxing Wudi meant. If summer solstice was really willing to lose face and Li Huaqing's attitude was lax, the Wang family of Beihai was bound to adjust its direction after it survived the current crisis. At that time, Wang Jingxin would become more important in the sequence of the Southeast Group, and the competition with Zhou Yuanshan in the future would become more and more fierce. What would happen in the future was still uncertain. But it was really too early to talk about this now. Tianlan has to suffer a little, Bai Zhanfang said softly. That boy doesn't feel wronged. I think he's a little too happy in the desert. Xiao Mahai's mind is in a mess all day long. He even took his daughter and sister to prison. I don't know what he wants to do. I'll beat him later. Dongxing Wudi snorted. The corners of Bai Zhanfang's and Bai Qingzhao's mouths twitched at the same time, showing a smile. He's determined to ride on Tianlan's coattails. He can't care about your face now, Minister Dongxing. Dongxing Wudi shook his head, feeling a little speechless. His cell phone suddenly rang. Dongxing Wudi took out his cell phone and glanced at it. His eyes suddenly froze. It was a call from the building of the army headquarters. Did something happen at this time? He frowned and pressed the answer button. The person on the other end of the phone reported something. Dongxing Wudi's face suddenly darkened and became extremely ugly, even a little angry. I'll be right there, he said and hung up the phone directly. What's wrong? Bai Qingzhao asked. It's a meeting of the army headquarters. Come with me. Dongxing Wudi took a deep breath, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. If the capture of a deputy governor of Beihai was a tentative move by the academics and the prince group, then the other side had exposed their real intentions by pointing their sword at Su Xinghe. Dongxing Wudi finally saw the other side's third move under great pressure. Only then did he understand that this was a combination of the other side's moves. It was turbulent, fierce, majestic, and powerful. He had expected the other side's counterattack, but he had never thought that the other side's counterattack would be so fierce. It was early winter on December 1st in Jianghu State. When Jianghu was in a state of turmoil and people in Jiangnan were in a state of panic, the academics and the prince group, which had not been silent at all, made a move again. It was also mixed with the power from the southeast group, which could not be concealed at all. On this cold night, an application from Beihai appeared directly in the building of the army headquarters. Jiang Hongwei, a member of the parliament of Zhongzhou State, the marshal of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State, and the commander of the Border Control Corps, codenamed Dijiang, applied to resign as a member of the parliament of Zhongzhou State, marshal, and the commander of the Border Control Corps. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.